Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Page Start Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the videos and the content on the channel. Follow us on social media and listen on any podcast listening platform. And welcome to episode 54. Before we get on properly with the preview, of course, of the Premier League and the Serie A weekends this week, the last for both leagues, let's take a look at Thursday's action, of course, and the Premier League. 3 games. Two of them were with the biggest importance, of course, for relegation battle in the Premier League. Everton defeating Crystal Palace 3-2. Aston Villa drawn against Burnley 1-1. Chelsea with the same result, drawn against Leicester City 1-0. The Chelsea-Leicester game, pretty pedestrian, nothing really important or special about it. Chelsea did not have nothing to play for. They lost the FA Cup last week. And Leicester on the mid-table, they're not going to go really any higher. They're not going to be playing European football. So it was a pretty pedestrian game just for the pride and for improving the finish on the season. Marcos Alonso equalised for Chelsea after James Maddison brilliantly opened the scoring for Leicester City inside 6 minutes. Of course, it hurts a little bit for Chelsea fans that Alonso, the player who scored, is pretty close is leaving to Barcelona, and it seems all but done that he will be moving to La Liga in the summer. Aston Villa drawn against Burnley, a result that could have been different if Emiliano Buendia didn't equalise straight after the break in the 48th minute. Ashley Barnes made it 1-0 from the penalty spot for Burnley. Burnley were 10 men. By the end of the game, Matthew Lowton was sent off, and Burnley lost 2 points that could have been really different and differential in terms of the relegation battle, and it could have given us a really interesting final day. But obviously, the biggest story, I think, of them all comes from Goodison Park. Everton, it was a crazy old game at the Goodison Park, and an even crazier scenario against Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace went 2-0 up by half-time. Mateta and Jordan Ayew made it 1-0 and 2-0 respectively at half-time, but the second half was absolute pandemonium. Michael Keane made it 2-1 with 54 minutes, and even so, it's still Crystal Palace leading. It's still Crystal Palace being technically the better side in a way, but Everton really upped their pressure, upped their game. And then Richarlison in the 75th minute equalised, and then the game went complete mayhem after that, of course. And the 85th minute, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the man who spent most of the season injured with Everton this season, comes in at the biggest time to score probably the biggest goal in Everton's season, save them from relegation and keep them in the Premier League. It was so much pandemonium that the fans already invaded the pitch by 85 minutes. They invaded the pitch. The game was still in play, pretty much full in play. It was not over, but the fans celebrated as it was over. I mean, somehow the nihilistic in me would think, what if Crystal Palace equalised? What if Crystal Palace scored twice in the space of the last 5 minutes and extra time? An additional time. If that happened, that would be absolutely disastrous. But anyway, Everton officially guaranteeing a remainder in the Premier League. They survived the relegation battle, 4 points ahead of Burnley and Leeds now, who have to battle it out in the last game of the season. So now Everton's game against Arsenal in the last day of the season will not mean anything. Frank Lampard, he has to get some credit, but I don't think, it will be easy for him. He'll probably be kept next season, hopefully, because for Everton, it seems to be that the project needs to be starting now to avoid having the same story, like this season in the Premier League, and having a better finish and returning to maybe European places they have missed for a long time. But again, it's a big story, big result for Everton. Congratulations for them on surviving in the Premier League. This leads us nicely to talk about the Premier League and preview it for the last time this season. Round 38 takes place this Sunday, of course, and all the games at the same time, 4 p.m. kickoffs it will be in the Premier League. Of course, Arsenal, Everton, Brentford, Leeds United, Brighton Hove Albion host West Ham, Burnley play against Newcastle, Chelsea against Watford, Crystal Palace host Manchester United, Leicester City host Southampton, Liverpool play Wolverhampton, City play Villa, of course 2 games important for the title race, and Norwich City host Tottenham Hotspur. Let's start, of course, from the title race, the hypotheticals around it, the sort of scenarios that everybody's trying to picture, of course, the dramatics. personally, I think it's closer to City than it is to Liverpool. There's more chance of, I think of Liverpool dropping points against Wolves than of City dropping points against Villa. But I genuinely believe that, there's still something in it for Liverpool, obviously, to try and play for. They have to play their chances till the end. They should go their strongest 11, I suppose, after the rotation that they did against Southampton in the midweek. City will not be given up as well. They will go with as strong of a lineup as I would think they could go, despite the absences that they have as well. They're missing Walker and Diaz and Stones. They have, a couple of injuries in the back that are not really helpful if you think about it, really, for Manchester City. And I don't think that you could trust their defence being modified this late into the season, and at a crucial point of the season, trying to clinch the Premier League trophy, starting with the likes of Zinchenko, for example, Nathan Ake, maybe even dropping Fernandinho to a centre-half position. You don't know what could happen. Again, in the West Ham game, didn't feel natural, and that's why the first half was pretty awful. Also Villa themselves are a pretty tough team, and again, there's these links with Gerrard and Coutinho and stuff like that, but I don't think that these will play any extra motivation. There's been even sort of rumours that Villa would get 15 million euros if Grealish wins the title with City, which is wrong, but in fact, what is real is that Wolves will get a 20 million bonus if Jota wins the league with Liverpool. So, if that is an extra motivation, it's going to be motivation for Wolves to lose against Liverpool, not to Villa to win against City. But again, if we're being realistic, grounding things down to a real talk, I think every team is going to play at the best of their abilities. City are not going to give up. Liverpool are not going to give up. It's obviously going to be a situation where the body is going to be in one stadium and the mind is going to be in the other stadium. Obviously, that's for Liverpool fans more than City, because for City, it's purely in their hands. They win against Villa, they would win the Premier League for sure. But for Liverpool, it is much about waiting for the result from the Etihad Stadium, waiting for a gift from Aston Villa, and how that's going to affect the mood of the fans in the stadium. We saw that a couple of seasons ago when City were losing in the early goings against Brighton, and the Liverpool fans had hopes that they could clinch a trophy in the last game of the season, but in the end, City beat Brighton 4-1 away from home, and Mahrez scored a hat-trick on the day, so it was quite a deflating result in the end. They don't want the same story, I think. Maybe Liverpool would want something more dramatic to go their way. For City, of course, they're not unbeatable, but it doesn't look like they are ready to drop points against Aston Villa. Anything can happen in football, but I don't think it will be this dramatic for City. If they want it to be this dramatic, it will be. It's only fair to say that City will lose it if they make it hard for themselves. I don't see them, being as bad as they can be, as they were in the first half against West Ham. I think Villa, are good. They have a better attack than West Ham, I suppose. They have more creativity than West Ham, but I don't think they will be necessarily, the side that will pull City apart and absolutely rip their defence open and find spaces right, left and centre. I think if Aston Villa want to do it and want to win the game, even for themselves, they would have to find and pick and choose the best moments. When City are, having lapse of concentration, there's sort of imbalanced defending, spaces behind the centre halves which can be easily found, I suppose. Liverpool would tell you that, Real Madrid would tell you that. There's loads of examples about that. West Ham could tell you that from last week. So clearly, it's all about City and how they will deal with the game, because Villa's approach is going to be one and done, is going to be trying to pick the right moments to hit City on the counter, try to find spaces behind the defence. It's all on City now, and the omen is on them to just try and finish the game as early as possible, not give their fans any nerves, not give Liverpool any hopes, and also, make it comfortable for themselves in the end, because, they were 14 points ahead. They were leading 40 points ahead at a certain point of the season, and they completely squandered that lead apart. So it's only fair that they need to make it comfortable the last day of the season to compensate for that sort of missed opportunity to finish the league even earlier than that, because since Christmas we've been talking about City potentially wrapping up the league and done, but we came to this point in the season where City, if they have a draw and Liverpool win on the other side, they're going to lose it in the most dramatic way the final day of the season. But again, it will be very poetic to watch, and as Jordan Henderson would said, it's going to be terrifying, and probably people are going to put the kids' channels on Indeed for themselves and for their kids to avoid watching the other game. They just want to watch their own team play. I think particularly for the Liverpool fans, it's going to be so nervous, but obviously it's going to be so exciting for all the neutrals and the Premier League viewers. Elsewhere in the Premier League, as I mentioned, I mean, most games this week do not really have much of depth behind them. I think significant games maybe in the top 4. I mean, Tottenham, I don't think they will drop points against Norwich. It's really hard to see that happening. Yes, there's the whole scenario about Norwich being already relegated, having nothing to lose. They will play with it all, the last game of the season in the Premier League and stuff, but I don't think that'll be enough. I think Tottenham will seal the deal. Even with the draw, it's going to be enough, but I think Tottenham will seal the deal against Norwich City. They will win, and they will get their 4th spot, and Antonio Conte, overall, is going to have a great season in regard. I mean, when you finish top 4, regardless if you want another trophy or not, an FA or a Carabao Cup, I think Conte's done his job really well, considering the sort of urgent nature of his appointment, the fact that he came not even in the middle of the season, like he came even, before that, like he came in a period where Tottenham was still in flux. He brought in some players in the transfer window, Kulusevski and Bentancur, improved the side, and he still needs improvements for next season, of course, but I think all in all, it's going to be considered a big positive when he finishes in the top 4 and brings the team back to Champions League football next season. For Arsenal, it's a game against Everton that they should win regardless. I mean, they're guaranteed playing European competition next season. It should have been the Champions League, but they missed a couple of results again. There's that period where they lost against Crystal Palace and Southampton and Brighton back-to-back. Those 3 games that could have made a big difference if they guaranteed any points from them. That this would have been a big difference. It would have been even more equal. Maybe even Arsenal would have the advantage over Spurs. We wouldn't have been talking this kind of talk anymore if they won those games. That's a bad patch. That is proven costly, I think, for Arsenal. As good as they were this season at certain points, as big of improvement as they made, considering how Arteta really stuck with his process and with all the things going on in the club and the players leaving and coming in and the injuries as well. So I think Arsenal did well for themselves this season, but it's just that final touch that is missing between going in the Champions League and going to the Europa League. United are going to be playing Crystal Palace, of course. They don't have any chance to go higher. They're playing Europa League football next season, but they have the chance to go lower if they drop points against Crystal Palace and West Ham, defeat Brighton and Hove Albion away from home. So the game is going to be big. These 2 games are, I think, going to be important in certain ways for United. West Ham play against Brighton and Hove Albion, who had a decent season. I mean, really good. 10th place, 48 points. Their record at home is not that great. Brighton Hove Albion, one of the worst sides at home. They only won 4 games in their stadium in the Amex this season, which is really telling something. But of course West Ham, again, the ones that they need results more than Brighton Hove Albion. Burnley play against Newcastle United, as I mentioned. With Everton out of that relegation race completely. Burnley play against Newcastle United, a side that is just hoping to finish as good as they can in the table and improve that next season, hopefully get some signing and stuff. So Burnley, if they win, they guaranteed survival, because Leeds, the goal difference is just too bad for Leeds United to try and catch up. Of course, they play against Brentford away from home. Brentford much comfortable, obviously. Leeds come in this game much stressful by the relegation. I think it's going to be one of those where the stress is going to get the better of the Leeds players, and it showed even in the last couple of games. They got early red cards and stuff, so they're not exactly at their best. I mean, the good story seems to be ending for Leeds, and it's been coming with, the first half of the season under Marcelo Bielsa continuing their suicidal football, and under Jesse Marsch, things didn't get a lot better, and again, the latest set of results for Leeds United didn't really help their case, though. The kind of games where they lost players, against Chelsea a red card, against Arsenal a red card, and the draw against Brighton, the last win goes back to early April in the Premier League, so you have to be really thinking those are the kind of games where Leeds should have won some points if they want to keep themselves in the conversation and had a much safer cushion. But again, it's going to go down to the wire between those two to know who's going to be the third player in the relegation battle. Is going to be the third team that's going to be dropping to the Championship. And Chelsea-Watford, a game that doesn't mean anything for both sides. Chelsea, anyway, they're going to be third, and Watford are already relegated, so there's not really much point in giving this game any sort of importance. But Chelsea, at least, the game is at home, and they need to finish the season as high as they can, of course, on a high note to to give themselves hopes for next season, of course, under new ownership, with signings potentially, and so much improvement could be made. Thomas Tuchel certainly staying, and the project with Chelsea is certainly continuing for next season. To Italy now, and it must be tense, I think, for the Milan fans in particular now, as they witness the last game of the season. Of course, one step away from absolute glory for them this season, returning to the Scudetto podium after 11 years actually, since winning the last Scudetto, of course, for AC Milan. But of course, before that, they have to get through the hopes of Sassuolo away from home. Before that, let's get through the round as a whole. Torino play against Roma on Friday. Of course, Genoa play Bologna, Atalanta against Empoli, Fiorentina against Juventus, Lazio against Hellas Verona, Spezia and Napoli on Sunday, Inter Sampdoria, Sassuolo against Milan, Salernitana against Udinese, and Venezia against Cagliari. Of course, there's important games on both sides, on both ends of the table, top and bottom, but let's start from the top, of course. AC Milan, after waiting for 11 years to win a Scudetto, we'll see how they will do against Sassuolo. It's a tough game, a tough trip away to the Reggio Emilia and the Mappe Stadium. It's definitely going to be a nervy game for AC Milan, who need 1 point to win the Serie A title, because they have the advantage over Inter in the head-to-head and the goal difference as well. So I think it's definitely a moment for history for Inter Milan, but for AC Milan. But obviously they don't want to jinx it. Everybody, I think, is waiting. I think the neutrals are waiting for AC Milan to win this Scudetto. It's going to be a great story with Zlatan Ibrahimovic and all of that at 40 years of age and plus, coming into AC Milan, winning a trophy with them, and potentially even staying for one more season, which is going to be even crazy to play in the Champions League once again for him. Big moment again for Inter, who went through a lot over the last decade or so. They've been through the ringer. They went through some really tough matches where they were middle of the table at the very best. One season they finished 12th, which was, I think, the bottom of the barrel as far as AC Milan were concerned. A side that dominated Europe in the early 2000s, found themselves in the 2010s in a really bad position after winning the Scudetto. No European football for a couple of seasons, playing Europa League at the very best, and a return to the Champions League this season that felt really welcome, although still lacking. A Scudetto win this season would probably propel them to the next level. There's a potential Bahraini takeover that's probably going to change a lot about the team. There's going to be players probably incoming, investments, big investments. They want to build a new stadium, obviously, similar to their city rivals Inter Milan. They want to build a new stadium. They have some challenges to get over. But at the moment, as it stands, the thing is they need to beat Sassuolo, a side that denied them a title before, in fact. Back in 2010, they denied them the title. So I think it's definitely a thing of absolute importance for AC Milan to beat Sassuolo and to get over them. Of course, the record, the last couple of games they played against them in the San Siro in particular, they did lose. But the good thing, I think, the positive thing they would take is that the last two times they played against them away from home and played at Reggio Emilia, they defeated them. So maybe they will take good optimism from the fact that they defeated them in Sassuolo in their stadium, in the Mappe Stadium, the last two times they played there away from home. They have a good record, I think. The last three times, in fact, the last even four times you could extend the streak of AC Milan playing there in the Reggio Emilia, they defeated Sassuolo in all of those games. There's loads of red cards in the games between Milan and Sassuolo, so you'd expect maybe something feisty. Obviously, Milan Milan, with the need to win, with the need to get a point even from the title. I think they should be calm, in my opinion. Stefano Pioli did so well this season. He kept them so calm and cool and collected. So he just needs to get them over the finish line in order to win the Scudetto. Of course, it's going to be a big moment, celebrated in all over the world, I think, for a side that had so many struggles and earned the sympathy, I would say, and the support of the football fans this season, and you almost willed by football fans to the Scudetto win. Of course, the support and the the sympathy has been unbelievable. I personally buy in that story. Obviously, again, a side that is as big as Milan, as dominating as they were in the early 2000s, struggling for nearly a decade financially, struggling in terms of players, no big results, no trophies. Until only one Super Cup in the last 10 seasons or so. It's a big drought. It's a big drought for a side like AC Milan, and hopefully, of course, is going to be the first step in rebuilding a side that could be invading Europe once again. Obviously, 7 Champions League, still an untouchable record at this moment as we're recording. Still, the second side with the biggest Champions League titles. Of course, Liverpool might equal them. Who knows? We will wait and see. For Inter Milan, of course, it's I'm not going to say a much simpler job, but I think a much straightforward job. They need to just win and wait for a result from Sassuolo. Obviously, the two games are going to be played at the same time, definitely, to avoid any sort of shenanigans. So Inter Milan have to beat Sampdoria, a side that is safe. They guaranteed safety. They guaranteed themselves safety on the last round, and the penultimate round, so they will have pretty much nothing to play for. But that doesn't mean that they will make it easy for Inter Milan, because I think they will travel there with certain pride to try and upset the apple cart and try to play the role of the party pooper and get some points out of Inter Milan, and that will obviously give the trophy and will give the title to AC Milan. On the other side, Inter Milan had a tough season. They had a rough patch, particularly after being eliminated from the Champions League against Liverpool. That cost them their position as leaders of the Serie A. They had that period, of course, where everybody was talking about the game in hand, but in the end they ended up losing it against Bologna away from home 2-1, and that, I think, was the moment that really changed the tide and gave AC Milan, I think, an absolute edge in the title race. Inter Milan, they haven't been that bad, but again, it was those moments that caused them the drop points and to drop behind in the lead. I mean, literally look at the record. AC Milan 25 wins, 8 draws and 4 losses. Inter Milan 24 wins, 9 draws and 4 losses. Like, the difference is only 1 draw between the two sides in terms of the table, and 2 points lost for Inter Milan gave them the advantage. I mean, if they were in equal points, we will absolutely be seeing something more dramatic. But I think, again, for AC Milan, it's as simple as get a point against Sassuolo. But obviously, in practice, on the field, there's going to be something different. Sassuolo is not going to make it easy. Sampdoria are not going to make it easy on the other side. So you really expect, again, one of those scenarios, the bodies in one stadium and the minds in the other, particularly for Inter Milan fans who would be following the results of Sassuolo against AC Milan, and keeping up to date with that game. Elsewhere on the table, again, with the top 4 set, the Europa League spots pretty much set and done and dusted. Only, I think, the last Europa League spot as well as the Conference League spot are still up for grabs. There's Atalanta, Fiorentina still vying for that spot. Roma could drop into that spot as well if they drop points against Torino. Fiorentina beat Juve maybe. Atalanta play Empoli, a side that survived as well and is staying for next season. And then you have, of course, the big games for the sides in the bottom. In particular, there's Cagliari, of course, who play Venezia, who already dropped to the Serie B, relegation confirmed for them. So there's Genoa, of course, who also are officially relegated, and Cagliari are still playing with a slim chance of surviving, for next season, of course. And then there's Salernitana, a great story in my opinion over the last couple of months. Salernitana, big result streak for them. They managed to get loads of points. They managed to get 16 points in the last 5 games, Salernitana, which not propelled them because that's a big word considering where they are on the table, but I think the latest set of results, of course, 4 wins and 3 draws, undefeated in the last 7, they got themselves 15 points out of the last 7 games, which is a big tally considering where Salernitana were and how the situation was in the table. The weakest defense of the Serie A, so they only have to win games now. They cannot rely on goal difference or anything like that. So it's a simple task as winning against Udinese at home. To win to survive in the Serie A, because any other result with Cagliari potentially winning and defeating Venezia, it's going to cause them to be the third side to be relegated. It's going to be interesting, and really it's been low-key one of my most favorite things to follow up in Serie A, this relegation battle, of course. And again, it's going to be an incredible story for Salernitana if they survive in Serie A in their first season there. That's it for this episode. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications, of course, to receive all the updates, and definitely follow us on social media. I'll be on Twitter Spaces later on, and listen on any podcast listening platform available. I was your host, SerieA of the PSP, and take care. Goodbye.